Hey folks, this is Kelani, bringing you another crafting guide. We're going to be looking at tailoring. So introducing my elementalist, Surza Dragonheart. Another alt just being used for professions right now, but I'm sure she'll get to 80 eventually. So for tailoring, we will be looking at the crafting materials of cloth and leather. Now, this isn't such a bad one actually, because currently, obviously this may change by the time you view this video, the only cloths which are going for expensive, I guess, I'll call it expensive relative to what they are, because I mean silk's pretty cheap for what it is. It's an N tier, but it only costs 20 copper per, and that's at the worst of times. You can get it down to 15, down to, I've had 10 before, so it's pretty damn cheap. The only expensive ones you're going to be looking at are jute and gossamer. Now, jute, if you're leveling while doing your tailoring, the best way for you to get any jute is actually from salvaging. So any light armours which you find, you should probably take a salvage kit to those instead of trying to vendor them. You'll more than definitely you'll definitely get an increased profit there if you're selling them, or you'll end up saving money if you're going to use the jute. Jute is used across armoursmith, leatherworker and tailor, so there is a little variance in where you can use it. Leathers are the same, except you would get them from medium. Now, I personally don't like this, as you can, you use leather for light armour when crafting it, so why can't you get leather from salvaging light armour? It's a bit. And why can't you get cloth from doing heavy? Because you use cloth in creating heavy and armoursmith. It's a little annoying, but never mind. At the moment, leather is actually the cheapest crafting material. If we just have a look at this, this may have changed since I bought a couple, but price of 5 copper, vendor price 3 copper. Price of 10 copper, 5 copper, 8 copper, 6 copper, 8 copper, 7 copper. So going all the way up, the only one which may be, it's not even that expensive, 12. The most expensive is the first leather, so that's just no worries at all. The problem with that is you don't actually want to buy so much leather. The refinement process can be a cheap way of getting experience. I usually, as you can see, I've got quite a lot left over. I usually refined leathers until they went completely grey, just because they were so cheap. I mean, you can always vendor these to get like half the price back, it's kind of crazy. But we'll mostly be looking at cloth. So if we just have a quick look, this is incredibly similar to armour smithing. If you haven't looked at the armour smithing video, essentially what you'll be doing is piecing together 2 crafting parts. We just have a quick look at those. So a paulette padding go with a paulette panel, headpiece padding goes with headpiece strap, etc, etc, etc. They're always at a ratio of 1 to 1. Now the exception is sandal soles, but these are a ratio of 2 to 1, as in 2 soles to 1 strap, but you create 2 soles at a time. So it's still 1 to 1, so it's 1 craft to 1 craft, even though you make 2 soles. I'm not entirely sure why they did that, unless they just wanted a small bit of realism in that you're creating 2 boots, therefore you will use 2 soles. But you don't use 2 straps? I don't know. So, as you can see with refinement, you refine cloth, and you refine leather. Now you don't actually go any higher than that. Example with armoursmith, that's a bad example. Example with weaponsmith, you would go dowel and then you would go metal plated dowel. You don't do that at all with these leathers and cloths. So that's quite nice, they stay separate. So there's no like, ooh, do I need to save a certain amount to go to a new bolt or whatever. You can just happily get rid of all of your scraps to bolts. Unless, of course, you want to sell excess scraps. So, we don't want to have a look at those ones. We want to have a look at those ones. For your insignias, you'll be looking at cloth, spool, Now they're sold from the vendor, and crafting material. Obviously your crafting material dictates what stats you have, etc, etc, etc. So if we just talk to the vendor, you can see that there are spools of thread. Now these sell in stacks of 10. This also gets a little bit annoying because you end up using like 25, 2, you know, it's random all over the spot, 3, 5, 4. So most of the time you'll end up with spares. As you can see, I've got 4 spare because I've obviously used 6 somewhere, which is probably a waste. You can sell these back on the trading company, and people do buy them because it's obviously cheaper buying from the vendor. But you're gonna lose money either way, so you might as well get as much you can back off the trading post for whatever people are willing to buy. So with every other crafting, it looks pretty much the same, especially when it comes to discovery. But if I just talk you through the way that you're going to level and the progression of leveling, essentially the same again. You want to refine as much as you can. So because we're not going to waste these at all. Like with weaponsmithing, we could waste planks by going to dowels, and we need them for metal plated dowels. There's no worry of that. So you can just completely refine all of your leather, all of your cloth, preferably until they're not orange. That'll get you the most experience. When you've done that, most of the time your crafting pieces will also be relatively low experience. So I mean, it's not really a great loss to do them in a bit of a squiffy order, but the way I did it was to make 1 of each, and depending on how many fine crafting materials I was going to use, make, for example, if I had lots of different crafting materials, I would make the cheapest one, which I believe is helmet, which usually requires 1 bolt rather, for the padding, and then 1 bolt, 1 leather for the strap. That seems to be the cheapest one, so I would make a lot of that, and then I'd just discover different helmets, essentially using the different crafting materials in different insignias. Obviously if I had a lot of one particular crafting material, I would then do a variance of crafting components. That's the word I was looking for, crafting components. So I could get the majority variance in the actual armor pieces which I'm making to give them the same stats on the same insignia from the same fine crafting material, just so I'm getting the most experience from what I'm doing. The nice thing about tailoring is that you don't need to plan as much as you do with the rest. Essentially, if you refine something and then take it somewhere, you're going to use it or you're not going to use it. It's not a case of, oh, I've used silk to make bolt of silk, whereas I actually need sheet of silk or something daft like that. Everything is bolt of silk. Everything is your specific cured hardened leather square, shall we say. Everything will be using that. There's no different leather square for, you know, this item. So you can happily refine everything and basically use it as you need it. For example, I have got plenty of gossamer, but I do not have actually any leather squares, so I can't make that at the moment. But what I can do is show you one of these. So make a lining and panel rather. Make sure that you've got 1-to-1. This nice thing here is that you can actually see I have 1 silk coat lining, so if you've missed over it or you're making a lot of them, you could say go through them. You see I don't have any of these, but if I say had 1 strap and no lining, then I could, like, while going through these I would see I have 1 strap, go to lining. That's wrong anyway. Go to padding and see, you know, it wouldn't say anything, so I'd then think, ooh, there's a strap there that needs a padding. That's quite nice. So we'll go ahead and create one of these duties, and you can see I've already discovered it, but what would happen here is that you would then press craft. Boom. But there we go. So I would make the carrion feathered vestments.
What brings you here?
It's honestly, I preferred leveling tailoring so far compared to anything else, simply because I didn't have to think ahead. I know when you get to the point where you have to plot out what you're going to create just so you don't end up wasting materials, it gets a little frustrating if you do it wrong. I mean, there's nothing worse than trying to be as careful as you can and then just completely wasting materials. The other curious thing about tailoring is it seems to actually have the least cost when you get to the exotic items, because once again, leather is cheap. The cloth isn't so cheap. The cloth is approximately 4 silver per scrap, depending, obviously it fluctuates somewhat, but you're looking at paying about 4 silver per scrap. But it doesn't require so much cloth. It's like 5 bolts, which is 10, which is 40 silver. That'll get you your insignia, and then depending on what you're creating, I mean, if you're creating a helmet, you only need 1 bolt, that's another 4, so that's another 16 silver. Compare that to weaponsmithing, where to make an exotic greatsword you need 42 orichalcumore, which are at 4 silver each. It's quite painful. So it's also one of the good ways I've found to make money, but we'll keep that between you and me. Because usually the items sell for about 2 gold and cost you about a gold 40, gold 50, gold 60 to make, if that, and they're selling for 2 gold 50, so it's not a bad profit margin. Definitely not a bad profit margin, though depending on how many people see this video, I don't think I'll be able to do that anymore. But never mind. As I was saying, I don't want to talk to you. It seems to be one of the easier ones. You've got your bags as well, but I don't think bags are profitable at all right now. I don't know, I just really like how tailoring leveled. It was just really straightforward. It didn't pull any weird tricks on you, and the only thing annoying about it is you have to run to the tailor to buy spools now and then, or get them off the trading post if you so desire. So for tailoring, this probably should have been covered at the start, but it's the little scissor icon. So if I just run out, and you can see the little scissor icon, just in case you were unsure. So I don't really think I can talk about much else to do with tailoring, honestly. If you have any specific questions or queries or hints, tips, tricks, you know, if you found a specific thing that works nice for tailoring, leveling up, feel free to share it. That'll be delightful for anyone heading this way, especially anyone who's trying to look for a cheap alternative route to any other route they've found, I suppose. So leave any of that good stuff down in the comments below. My next one will be artificing. I've had a glimpse at that, and it looks incredibly similar to weaponsmithing. In fact, it looks almost identical to weaponsmithing, so we'll have a look at that in the next video. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you need anything at all, feel free to add me on KelaniScar2950, and I will see you next time.